So, again about fungibility and privacy, this was an overview, and we will explore some of the topics that have been addressed right now. The first topic was CoinJoin. CoinJoin can give some advantage for privacy and also some advantage for scalability itself. One of the problems is how to make people actually use CoinJoin, and so we have here Adlai Chandrasekhar to talk us about JoinMarket, which is actually a way to make people use CoinJoin and to create economic incentives to do that.
JoinMarket, just to clear up a misconception that I heard yesterday, I hope it was a joke, but just in case, JoinMarket, like Bitcoin, is a protocol. It is not a company. It is a protocol which is defined by an open source reference implementation, but there are other versions of the code out there. And it's entirely, I guess you could say it's voluntary, like Bitcoin. And those of you who might have less of a finance background might not be familiar with the term risk-free rate. So when you're investing, for example, fiat currency, the risk-free rate is considered buying government bonds. It's the least risky investment, and you get a very low return. And JoinMarket gives you the same thing in Bitcoin. So it's not just fungibility, it's also an investment method. I'm one of the JoinMarket contributors. The people who wrote the bulk of the code are also present here today, and I'll let them take responsibility if they choose. So just a humorous quote. Now, we actually haven't had a definition of fungibility yet. So fungibility is the property where equal amounts of some commodity, monetary good, whatever, are interchangeable. So in the case of mushrooms, you do not want to interchange a gram of one mushroom for another. But in the case of Bitcoin, most software will treat equal quantities of Bitcoin the same regardless of their history. It's people who actually go and look at the history and violate your fungibility. So together with all of the other efforts, we are trying to make their job more difficult. Another interesting quote from the cypherpunks list. More than 2 decades before JoinMarket appears, Eric Hughes foresaw this development. And this is actually what JoinMarket gives you, very precisely. It's a way of transferring a non-private good in a more private manner. Now, he says anonymous. And that leads us to what is anonymity or privacy. More misconceptions I'd like to clear up before talking about JoinMarket itself. Anonymity is always within a set. There's this idea of an anonymity set. So you're one of a few billion people. You're one of a few million Bitcoin users. You might be one of around 1,000 JoinMarket users. If you're at a protest wearing a Guy Fawkes mask, you are one of those people. If you show up with the wrong mask because you like Mr. Robot, so you're wearing the F Society mask, suddenly your anonymity set is a lot smaller. So the purpose of fungibility systems is to grow your anonymity set, not just to get some sort of magical anonymity. There's also this quote of, there are 2 kinds of encryption, that which keeps out your kid sister and that which keeps out the government. I personally have nothing against kids nor sisters. This is Bruce Schneier's wording. And the same is true for privacy as well. You can, if I may mix metaphors here, you can fool most of the people most of the time, but you can only be a saint for 6 confirmations before the devil knows you're dead. So the government is going to know which Bitcoins are yours. Maybe a nosy spouse can figure out which Bitcoins are yours. We are more focused on giving people privacy that stands up to less funded tracking startups and to casual observation. There's also the concept of hiding and the concept of deniability. So tracking startups that say this customer of yours is using the darknet or they're gambling, they can't actually prove that. They are simply saying, we found a link. It's a very likely link. We estimate it at X%, but they can't prove that that link is you. So you have deniability from even regular Bitcoin use. We try to give you better deniability, but you have to go to great lengths to actually hide, to have people not able at all to tell what your transaction graph is. Essentially, if you get enough deniability of enough different plausible explanations, you are hiding behind a smokescreen of possible interpretations. So before JoinMarket, users would just use all sorts of arbitrary methods. They would buy an altcoin, send it to another exchange, sell it back, send through different wallets, send through gambling sites. And arguably, these methods even they give you worse privacy. So there emerged sites dedicated to unlinking. They called themselves tumblers, which is a reference to coin tumbling. When you collect physical coins and they're dirty, you can mix them with sand and water to clean them out. And this is actually a misconception, because when you use a fungibility technology that everyone else is not using, your coins become dirtier. People, like a tracking startup, will look at your coins and say, oh, this person is trying to be more private. So what you get here is that your personal transaction graph might be more difficult to track, but overall your coins are distinguishable as privatized coins. Now, Greg Maxwell proposed CoinJoin and CoinSwap in 2013 on Bitcoin Talk. CoinJoin has gained traction. CoinSwap, unfortunately, has not. The best marketed CoinJoin implementation was Dark Wallet, which worked. You could use it to produce CoinJoins without a central server. Unfortunately, you had to wait a very long time. You had to wait hours, days, until enough people with enough Bitcoin were online at the same time, and then you could make a CoinJoin. Now, just in case anyone here has not seen exactly what a CoinJoin looks like, this is arguably the simplest smart contract. We have, in this case, two participants, both with 0.8 Bitcoins. One of them has them in one output in the middle, this one. The other one has two outputs, the first and the third one, and they each get 0.8 Bitcoins out. And there's no way for you, just looking at this transaction, to know which output corresponded to the middle input and which output corresponded to the first and third inputs. So, JoinMarket's goals emerged out of that status quo, that prior art that I described, mainly the pain of using Dark Wallet. So, first of all, no counterparty risk. We don't want to be a centralized mixing site. We are not going for strong privacy. Strong privacy is difficult to achieve. It uses complicated mathematics, which definitely most Bitcoin users don't understand, and possibly even most people. It has to be a liquid tool. It has to be highly available. You need to be able to show up with dozens or hundreds of Bitcoins and actually perform CoinJoin right away. And JoinMarket meets this goal. You can make dozen Bitcoin CoinJoins instantly with several different counterparties, and you can even make CoinJoins with hundreds of Bitcoins, although that's less liquid. It has to be compatible with the existing vanilla Bitcoin protocol. And some people might not like this attitude, but we do not want to require our users to install any different software other than what client they have today. So if you use some funky old Bitcoin client from 5 years ago and it doesn't have an RPC command, which we use, that's a bug as far as we are concerned. Please let us know. And finally, it's probably pretty obvious, but we want a system which can be used. If it's not usable, it's not useful. We are going for a working tool that people can use as soon as possible. So JoinMarket's fundamental innovation, which I believe several people came up with independently, is that you compensate people for participating in the protocol. And this achieves both the fact that people are incentivized to stay available. They leave their JoinMarket clients running, what they didn't do with Dark Wallet. And it brings in additional liquidity. People who don't care about fungibility do care about making money. So they run the JoinMarket software, they increase your anonymity set as a user of JoinMarket, and these are people who are investing dozens or hundreds of Bitcoins. They would not leave those in a hot wallet. They would put them in cold storage and forget about them for a year or more. Instead, they're now running hot wallets, which we hope are secure, and they are increasing other people's anonymity sets. So JoinMarket divides participants into two different roles: the passive participants, or makers, and those who initiate transactions, or the takers. The passive participants are always running, whereas the initiators initiate a transaction and then disconnect, initiate another one, disconnect. If you're a participant, you just sign transactions that look okay to you. If you're an initiator, you're actually responsible for coordinating the entire transaction, talking with the counterparties, building the transaction. So the initiators pay fees and the participants earn them. Now, because the initiators are coordinating the transactions, they actually learn some information about the other participants, which means that the regular participants get less privacy than the initiators. If you want the best possible privacy, you have to pay for it. So we're going to run through the protocol quickly. If you want to get a precise sense of it, you have to read the code itself. The participants advertise publicly how much liquidity they have and what fees they're expecting to get. The initiators pick which counterparties they want, and they contact them with an encryption key and the amount they want to transfer. Remember, in CoinJoin, everyone has to have the same amount of output, so you need to know the amount. The participant replies each one separately with their encryption key, and from this point onwards, everything happens with end-to-end encryption in a kind of hub and spoke model where the initiator has an end-to-end encrypted channel with each participant. So now the initiator signs their encryption key with the Bitcoin key. We don't use the Bitcoin keys for the encryption itself, but we do sign the encryption key so that you know you're actually talking with someone who owns those Bitcoins rather than just someone who wandered in. The participants reply with the unspent outputs that they want used as their inputs, and with the addresses to which they want the equal-sized CoinJoin output and their change. Also, they sign with a Bitcoin key. The initiator constructs the transaction, sends it to the participants, they sign, the initiator signs, and broadcasts. And that's how we get CoinJoin. You may notice a problem here. The initiator is the last one to sign. So what if they don't sign? They've actually learned the mapping. They've learned which inputs belong to which makers, and they know additional unused addresses of those makers. So if they don't sign at the end, they've learned this for free. And this attack was known for a while. We didn't want to not release a project with some theoretical attack, but over the course of the summer, this attack began to happen in practice. So we saw the successful transaction count increasing, but in parallel to that, very suddenly, there appeared about 3 to 10 times as many failed transactions, where someone would start the protocol and break it off partway after learning your mapping. And we call this a snoop attack. It's not a Sybil attack. That was another misconception people had yesterday. So the snoop attack is free. It doesn't cost the snoop anything. So we've come up with a second protocol, which is released and running, which ameliorates this attack. It can't be prevented entirely. Notice that if you really want to know people's mapping, you can just pay for the transaction, complete it, and you've paid a bit of money, but you still learn the mapping. So the second protocol has the same basic sequence. We took this opportunity to add a signature on every message. And the key thing here is that the takers don't just sign the encryption key with a Bitcoin key. They actually commit with a unique commitment to some Bitcoin, some unspent Bitcoin. It doesn't even have to be the same one. Now, what does it mean that this is a unique commitment? Every Bitcoin that exists currently generates one commitment. And if you've seen a commitment, you can't figure out which Bitcoin created it. But if you see the same commitment again, you know it's that same Bitcoin. If you see a different commitment, you know it's a different Bitcoin. So this lets the makers, the participants, not talk to people who are initiating multiple transactions. Effectively, it puts a cost on snooping. You can still snoop, but you have to create new coins each time. It's a very, very cheap rate limiting. And we've not yet seen anyone conducting a snoop attack on the second protocol. So either this was a sufficient discouragement, or they're simply writing code and collecting funds, and the snoop attack will continue. That remains to be seen. Now, future directions. We have 2 wallet integrations that are pretty much written, although they need more review and testing. That's Electrum and Core. We have a hybrid mode which doesn't quite work yet, where if you don't have to make a transaction immediately, you can participate in other people's transactions and possibly even earn more than the fee for your own transaction. We want to expose an API so that existing services can benefit both from the interest of a hot wallet. Any exchange would have every reason to use this. And so that an exchange could, for example, offer its customers withdraw with CoinJoin. And I believe one of the testnet faucets does this today, although not in a very programmatic manner. We want to gather statistics on the economic activity that's happening here. JoinMarket is the first market of its kind, and there are a lot of Bitcoin flowing through it. There was an estimate of about $1 million a month. I didn't calculate it, so I'm just quoting it. And people are earning money here. Some participants earn more than others. We want to look at how much are people earning, what's the variance between that, what are the optimal fee strategies, how can you maximize your earnings. So there's a lot of unmined data here, and it's just sitting in the blockchain. It's all public. We want a tool that lets people gauge the privacy improvement that they could get and that they got after using JoinMarket. Because right now, it's pretty obvious that doing a single coin join is almost useless, and that doing 100 coin joins is pretty confusing to anyone who's tracking you, but where do you draw the line? Do you do 5 coin joins? Do you do 50 coin joins? So we need some tool that lets people figure that out, because these cost money. People are paying per coin join. And we want to implement CoinSwap, because the cool thing about CoinSwap is that whereas in CoinJoin, the anonymity set of a single coin join is the participants in that specific coin join, in CoinSwap, the anonymity set is everyone who is doing a coin swap at the same time, even if they weren't coordinating directly with each other. I'm not going to go over how the CoinSwap protocol works, but achieving that level of anonymity set increase using chained coin joins is a lot more expensive, and I doubt that that's the right strategy. The right strategy is to offer the additional protocol. So, questions, please. How are we for time?
Okay, we have 6 minutes.
Yes, any questions? Any questions
One
from
question
IRC?
there.
Yes.
Can you characterize your, are you looking at the coin shuffle approach that increases the decentralization and some of the security aspects, or what can you characterize your approach with respect to that?
So coin shuffle.
Can you repeat the question for the people watching on the live stream?
Well, I'm paraphrasing here, but the question was, how does this compare to coin shuffle, essentially? Correct me if your question was more specific. So CoinShuffle, for people who aren't familiar with it, is a protocol which results in a CoinJoin transaction, but the way it's created is more private per counterparty, per participant, than simply than everyone telling one coordinator, here are my coins, I want them to go here. It involves several stages of messaging between the participants where they incrementally add blinded information and unblind it, and eventually it results in a regular coin join transaction that can be broadcast to the network and is indistinguishable from regular coin joins that we make. So it is an improvement. It's a more complicated protocol, which means that it's lower priority.
But it solves some of the problems you seem to be calling out there, especially the de-anonymization problem. So that's why I would think you might be interested in it.
So it solves the most naive version of the snooping attack. The problem is when you combine a snooping attack with a Sybil attack. There's nothing preventing a single person or a company from running multiple JoinMarket clients. And if you have a larger number of JoinMarket clients, a large number of participants, or if you're initiating multiple transactions, then you can eliminate the coins which you know belong to you, and you can see which ones belong to the other person. If you manage to isolate a single participant, for example, if you run 3 participants and the initiator, and you simply contact one additional participant, you get the same information that the current snoop gets. It'll cost you capital expense because, and it's not exactly a cost, but you have to tie up bitcoins to run the participants, and you have to pay fees or cycle new UTXOs, but you still learn that information. So it's also not a perfect fix.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what percentage of JoinMarket users are using Onion Routing?
Too late.
That's a good
Can you repeat the question again?
Okay, what percentage of JoinMarket users are using onion routing? I assume that means Tor, because I would be surprised if anyone is using I2P. I'm not even sure you can connect to the servers we're using right now with I2P. We use servers merely for the communication channels. The servers don't have access to the information that's end-to-end encrypted, although they do see the activity levels. So they get some information. The question, though, was what percentage are using onion routing? I know that it's definitely supported by the code. You simply have to change false to true, and you get onion routing as long as you've got Tor running on the same computer, or you configure the address. We've not collected that information because we're not spying on our users. More questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned something about coin swap versus coin join. Could you elaborate your comments on whether you see doing future work in the direction of coin swap, or if you think more of the future work should be in coin join?
So a bit of a personal story. I am one of those who independently thought of this incentivization idea, and I imagined it with CoinSwap. So I think building CoinSwap from the start is a much more, let's say, scalable solution, because you get the large anonymity set from the beginning. You do have to agree that everyone coin swaps at discretized amounts. If you have one coin swap happening with a size of 1 Bitcoin in parallel to a coin swap of 2 Bitcoins, it's pretty obvious that they're not the same people. But if everyone's making coin swaps in sizes of 1, 10, 100, 10th, 100th, etc., then you have these tiered anonymity sets. So I see that as a much more scalable solution. I believe, I don't have hard numbers on this, but I believe that to achieve the same size of anonymity set using parallel coin swaps or chained coin joins, you would end up putting a lot more data in the chain using coin joins. The way JoinMarket works right now, we're actually bloating the chain because each initiator creates a large transaction that's some constant factor larger than a regular transaction. Whereas CoinSwap, an individual coin swap is 4 transactions total, whereas CoinJoin is a single transaction. But those 4 transactions happening in parallel with another pair's 4 transactions and another pair's 4 transactions can give you roughly the same anonymity set as, throwing out a number here, one coin join of 6 participants, which is more difficult to coordinate, or many coin joins. You need an entire network, a switching network of coin joins of fewer participants. If you have 50 people doing coin swap in parallel, you would need a tremendous network of coin joins to even come close to that anonymity set. The main challenge with coin swap is that it's a much more stateful protocol. You don't simply negotiate, exchange information, sign, and broadcast to the blockchain. You fund multi-signature addresses, and then you exchange information, and then you either take out your new coins, or you have to wait for a lock time to expire and get back your old coins if the counterparty vanished. So just in terms of implementing it, CoinSwap is a more complicated protocol, which is why the consideration of usable is useful has dictated that CoinJoin appeared first.
Thank you very much, Adlai.
Thank you.
Thank you.